Cimoooooooo!
What's going on, everyone? For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Cimo, and I just want to first of all thank Paul from Team APS for giving me the ability to do this guest upload for his channel. So thank you so much, Paul. I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunity. Now today I wanted to do a discussion video on something that's just really been on my mind for quite some time, and that's looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! As its own language. Now you might all be confused at what I'm saying because I'm not talking about, Spanish, English, French, German, Japanese, not necessarily in that context, but more so of the fact that we as a community actually develop our own language for the game that we love and play. So let me give you all some context. So when I was flying out to Nationals this year, me and a friend of mine were sitting next to each other on the flight, and we were just talking as any two Yu-Gi-Oh! Players would. We were just talking about how, I overlay these two Burning Abyss monsters for a Dante, milled a Graph and a Seer, and then was able to make Mech Whip so that if he had the Valk, I could out it, and then I had the Breakthrough skill for the Trish and anything else that he had for his next turn. Just stuff that would just, for us Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, be something that would just be totally, like, everyday conversation. But then the guy that was in the third seat, the window seat, after a couple hours of hearing this, he looked over to us and he said, I've been hearing you guys talk about this for the last few hours, and it just sounds like a completely foreign language to me because you're speaking English, but I don't have a clue what you're talking about. And so that really got me thinking, because I did study language when I was in college, and it was really just interesting to hear someone say that, because it kind of like takes it out of perspective for us, because to us, it doesn't seem like anything different, but to people who don't have a fucking clue what we're talking about, it is like we are speaking a different language. And if you look at it, we create so many connotative meanings of different words, and that means just being able to take a word and giving it a completely new context. For example, look at the word bounce. We refer to that as returning a card to the hand. Spin, a card going back to the deck. Dump, taking a card from the deck and sending it to the graveyard. All these terms that we come up with just over time as a community, it's actually pretty incredible, A, creating them in the first place, and B, managing to have them stick for as long as they have. There's another example of this too, that back when Yu-Gi-Oh! Was way in its infancy, and this is when Breaker the Magical Warrior was like one of the most sought after cards in the game, okay? And what happened was I summoned Breaker, and my opponent was okay with that, and then what I did was I said break, and then he's like, what are you talking about? And it was just really funny because he had never heard that term used before. And so then I had to explain to him, oh yeah, I'm destroying your back row. That's what break means. And he's like, okay. And so it's so funny now because, especially for us veteran players, we all know that break means break the back row. But it's just so funny how, rather than just saying, activate the effect, or, effect, or something like traditional, we say break just because it's breaker and just because it sounds badass. And it's just really cool too because even as new sets come out, we develop language for those new sets almost like that. It's just really, think when Secret Forces came out. When Valk and Trish came out, we now say, oh, he didn't Valk me, or, oh, I just got Trished. We use Valk and Trish like verbs, rather than nouns, which they are. And so it's just really interesting to see how that language evolves and how we shorthand this language to such a point where it's so simplistic, but yet we all understand it. And shorthanding and abbreviating names is a completely different discussion all on its own. Just think of how many different card names that you shorthand or abbreviate just because it's easier to just say one word rather than like two or three. It's kind of really lazy, but at the same time, it works because if you say that, people know exactly what you're talking about. And I think the part that really blows my mind is that if you think about, you could go and play Yu-Gi-Oh! Against really anyone who speaks a different language than you. I could go play with someone who speaks German or who speaks Chinese or anything like that, and just playing a game, we know exactly what's going on for the most part because just by some simple hand gestures, we know exactly what's going on, what interactions are taking place, because Yu-Gi-Oh! In itself is its own language. And that just blows my mind because you can interact with people that you never thought you'd have the chance to do that with. And the fact that they can understand you, even though you two can't even speak a word of the same language, is pretty cool. Let me know down in the comments what you all think about Yu-Gi-Oh! As its own language. You know, ever since that conversation with that man on the plane, it's just been something that's been on my mind non-stop, and really thinking about how we choose and pick our own words and language to be able to play this game, and you know, how those things, you know, manage to blow up on a mass scale so that people just understand it and it just becomes second nature. Thank you all so much for watching the video. Thanks again to Paul from Team APS for the opportunity. Couldn't be more grateful for that. And if you really liked what you saw, come on and head on over to my channel because I have some really high energy content. I do deck profiles, in-depth card discussions like the one I just did, and I'm also the host of the Yu-Gi-Tuber Grand Championship, so you got that to look forward to as well. So thank you all so much again, and we'll see you next time.
Cimoooooooo!